The massive bridge of HMS Prometheus was silent except for the soft hum of life support systems running on minimal power. Emergency lights cast a dim red glow across the faces of the crew as they watched their captain stare at the main display. Through the view screen, they could see the rings of Saturn stretching endlessly into space, chunks of ice and rock providing them with much-needed cover. Admiral James Walker stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his weathered face showing no emotion as he watched the enemy ships pass by in the distance. The Stellar Dominion's vessels glowed with bright blue energy, their sleek designs making the human ships look like ancient relics in comparison. But Walker knew better. The Prometheus might be humanity's last battleship, but it was far from obsolete. "Status report," he said quietly, his voice carrying across the silent bridge. Lieutenant Robert Mason looked up from his damaged console. "Main power is at 5%, just enough to keep us hidden. Life support is stable. Hull breach in sections 4 through 7 has been contained." He paused, checking another reading. "The quantum drive is, well, sir, it's doing something strange." Walker turned to face his officer. "Strange how?" "The damage it took during the battle. It's not completely offline, but it's not exactly online either. The readings suggest we're partially out of phase with normal space. That's probably why their sensors haven't picked us up yet." This was interesting news. The quantum drive had been experimental technology, rushed into service when the war started going badly. No one fully understood its capabilities, but right now, it might be the only thing keeping them alive. 3 days earlier, the Battle of Titan had been humanity's last stand. The Prometheus, leading a fleet of Earth's remaining ships, had engaged the Dominion's forward fleet. The battle had been fierce, but the outcome was never really in doubt. One by one, Earth's ships had been destroyed by the Dominion's superior weapons. But Walker had seen an opportunity in defeat. As the Prometheus took heavy damage, he ordered all hands to prepare for his desperate plan. They vented plasma from their engines, creating a massive explosion that, to all observers, looked like the proud ship's final moment. In the chaos and radiation, they had managed to limp away, hiding in Saturn's rings while broadcasting a false debris field from their last known position. Now, the Dominion fleet was celebrating their victory, believing they had destroyed humanity's last major warship and its famous commander. Their communications, which the Prometheus was still able to intercept, were full of victory speeches and plans for Earth's surrender. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Lisa Brown, her hand pressed to her earpiece, "I'm picking up more transmissions from the Dominion fleet. They're discussing plans for Earth." Her face went pale as she listened. "Sir, they're not planning to accept surrender. They're talking about cleansing the planet for their own colonists." The bridge crew fell into an even deeper silence. They had all known the Dominion was ruthless, but this was beyond anything they had imagined. Walker's jaw tightened, the only sign of the anger he felt. "How many ships do they have moving toward Earth?" he asked. Tactical Officer John Peters consulted his screen. "Main fleet is about 40 ships, sir. Mostly destroyers and cruisers, but they have 3 of their dreadnoughts with them. More ships are arriving through their jump points every hour." Walker nodded slowly, his mind already working on possibilities. "And our status? What weapons are still operational?" "Main guns are at 60% capacity. We have 8 missiles left in the aft tubes. Point defense grid is mostly intact. The real problem is power. We can't run weapons and engines at full capacity, not with the damage we took." "What about the quantum drive?" Walker turned back to Lieutenant Mason. "You said it was acting strange. Could we use it?" Mason ran his hands through his short hair, a nervous habit he had when thinking hard. "Maybe, sir. The readings suggest we're in some kind of partial quantum state. If we could control it." He trailed off, his fingers flying over his console. "Sir, I think we might be able to use this. The drive isn't broken. It's doing something new, something the Dominion might not be prepared for." Walker allowed himself a small smile. Throughout the war, humanity had been consistently outgunned and outmatched by Dominion technology. But humans had one advantage. They could adapt, improvise, and think in ways the rigid Dominion military never did. "Get engineering up here," he ordered. "I want to know everything about what this quantum drive is doing, and I want to know how we can use it." The next 12 hours were a flurry of activity, conducted as quietly as possible to maintain their hidden status. Engineering teams worked with Mason to understand the quantum drive's new behavior. They discovered that the battle damage had caused it to malfunction in an unexpectedly useful way. Instead of moving the ship through space, it was shifting them partially out of phase with normal matter. "It's like we're halfway between dimensions," Chief Engineer Mike Taylor explained, pointing to a complex diagram on his tablet. "We're here, but we're also not here. That's why their sensors can't find us. We're not fully existing in the same space they're scanning." Walker listened to all the technical details, but his mind was already moving to tactical applications. "Can we control it? Move in and out of this state at will?" "We think so," Taylor nodded. "It'll take some fine-tuning, but the principles are sound. We could potentially shift back to normal space, fire our weapons, and then shift out again before they can return fire." This was the advantage Walker had been hoping for. The Prometheus might be damaged, but if they could master this new capability, they could become something the Dominion had never faced before, a ghost ship that could strike without warning and vanish before they could respond. "Get to work on it," he ordered. "I want combat trials as soon as possible. We need to know exactly what we can and can't do before we make any moves." As the engineering teams dispersed, Walker walked to the front of the bridge and stared out at Saturn's rings again. Somewhere out there, the Dominion fleet was preparing to destroy his homeworld. They thought they had won, thought they had destroyed humanity's last hope of resistance. They were wrong. The Prometheus wasn't destroyed. It was evolving. And soon, very soon, the Dominion would learn that it was a terrible mistake to back humanity into a corner, because humans were at their most dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. Walker turned back to his crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his heart. "Send word through the ship," he said. "All hands prepare for combat drills. We're going to learn how to fight as a ghost, and then we're going to teach the Dominion why they should have made damn sure we were dead before they celebrated." The bridge crew straightened in their seats, new energy flowing through them. They weren't running, and they weren't hiding. They were preparing. The war wasn't over. In fact, Walker thought, with a grim smile, it was about to enter a phase the Dominion never saw coming. Humanity's last battleship had a few surprises left, and the enemy was about to learn that the hard way. Lieutenant Robert Mason hadn't slept in 36 hours, but he couldn't stop now. The quantum drive readings on his screen were showing something incredible. With each test, they understood more about their ship's new abilities, and what he was seeing now could change everything. "Admiral Walker," he called out, his voice echoing across the dimly lit bridge. "I think you need to see this." The Admiral walked over, his boots making no sound on the metal floor. The whole ship was running in silent mode, hiding among Saturn's rings like a wolf in tall grass. The crew had gotten used to speaking in whispers, moving carefully, living like ghosts. "What have you found?" Walker asked, leaning over Mason's console. Mason pointed to a series of wave patterns on his screen. "We've been testing the quantum drive's phase-shifting capabilities in small bursts. Each time we shift, we leave a trace in normal space, like a footprint in snow. But look what happens when we adjust the frequency." He typed in a command, and a new pattern appeared. The waves changed, becoming almost invisible against the background noise of space. "We can control how visible we are to their sensors," Mason explained. "We can be completely hidden, partially visible, or fully material. And we can switch between states in less than a second." Walker's eyes narrowed as he studied the readings. "Can we fire weapons while shifted?" "That's the really interesting part," Mason said, pulling up another screen. When we're fully shifted, no. But at about 40% shift, we can still interact with normal matter while being almost invisible to sensors. We could fire a shot and vanish before they even see where it came from. The Admiral straightened up, his mind already working through the tactical possibilities. How long can we maintain each state? Full shift, about 6 hours with our current power levels. Partial shift, maybe 12. But here's the thing. We're not just hiding. When we're shifted, we're actually sliding between dimensions. In theory, we could pass right through solid matter. Walker's eyebrows rose. Through their shields. Better. Mason grinned. Through their hulls. The implications were staggering. The Dominion's greatest advantage had always been their superior shield technology. Human weapons could barely dent them. But if the Prometheus could phase through those shields entirely. A call came through from engineering. Chief Engineer Taylor's voice crackled over the comm. Admiral, we've finished the power redistribution you asked for. We can now run weapons at 80% capacity while maintaining shift capability. Good work, Walker replied. How are the hull repairs coming along? Slowly, sir. We've sealed the worst breaches, but sections 4 through 7 are still exposed to vacuum. We've moved all critical systems away from those areas. Walker nodded to himself. They were wounded but not crippled. And now they had a weapon no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. Lieutenant Mason, he said, prepare a combat simulation. I want to know exactly what we can do with this new capability. The next few hours were spent running virtual battles, testing different scenarios. They discovered they could phase through solid objects at will, but timing was crucial. Staying phased too long drained their power, and shifting back to normal space at the wrong moment could be catastrophic. Lisa Brown, monitoring Dominion communications, suddenly sat up straight. Sir, high-priority transmission intercepted. The Dominion fleet is mobilizing. They're starting their approach to Earth earlier than planned. Walker moved to the main tactical display. Show me. A holographic map appeared, showing the positions of known Dominion ships. They were gathering in force, forming up into attack formations. Their confidence was clear. They weren't even trying to hide their movements. Time estimate to Earth? Walker asked. At their current speed, 5 days, Brown replied. They're broadcasting victory messages on all frequencies. They're already dividing up Earth's territories among their commanding officers. A low growl of anger went through the bridge crew. These aliens thought they had won, thought they could just take humanity's home without a fight. Sir, Mason called out, I have something else. I've been analyzing their ship movements. They always maintain the same distance from each other, exactly 300 kilometers apart. It's too precise to be coincidence. Walker moved back to Mason's station. Explain. I think their ships are linked somehow. Their shields, their targeting systems, everything works in perfect coordination. That's how they can concentrate their shield power so effectively. Mason pointed to a pattern in their movement data. But if they need to maintain exact distances, then disrupting that pattern could disrupt their entire network. Walker finished. A plan was forming in his mind. If we could get inside their formation, using our phase shift, we could cause chaos. Mason nodded. Their whole system depends on precision. One ship out of place could throw everything off. Walker straightened up, his decision made. We need a test run. Find me a lone Dominion ship, something small. We're going to practice our new tricks. It didn't take long to find a target. A Dominion scout ship had separated from the main fleet, running routine patrol patterns through the outer system. It was perfect. Isolated, relatively small, and far enough from the fleet that any distress calls would take time to reach help. The Prometheus powered up its engines for the first time in days, moving silently through Saturn's rings. They maintained a partial phase shift, appearing as nothing more than a slight distortion in space. Target in range, Tactical Officer Peters reported. They haven't detected us. Walker stood at the center of the bridge, watching the scout ship grow larger on their main screen. Take us to 40% phase shift. Prepare main guns. The ship hummed as its weapons charged. They were about to find out if all their theories worked in practice. Sir, Mason said quietly, if our calculations are wrong about the phase shift, we could materialize inside their ship. We'd both be destroyed instantly. Walker nodded. Then let's make sure our calculations are right. Take us in, nice and slow. The Prometheus glided forward like a predator stalking its prey. Distance dropped rapidly. 1,000 kilometers, 500, 200. Phase shift stable, Mason reported. All systems nominal. They were close enough now to see individual details on the scout ship's hull. The alien vessel continued its patrol, completely unaware of the ghost sliding up beside it. Position us directly above their bridge, Walker ordered. Let's give them a proper introduction. The Prometheus moved into position, its massive bulk hovering just 50 meters above the scout ship. They were so close they could see the aliens moving around inside their bridge through the viewports. Walker allowed himself a small smile. Take us back to normal phase. Let's show them that humans don't die easily. The Prometheus shifted back into normal space, suddenly appearing out of nowhere directly above the scout ship. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then chaos erupted on the alien vessel as alarms began blaring and crew members started running in panic. Target their engines, Walker commanded. Let's test our weapons. The Prometheus's main guns roared to life, sending precisely aimed shots through the scout ship's shields, as if they weren't even there. The alien vessel's engines exploded in a brilliant flash, leaving it dead in space. Phase shift now, Walker ordered, and the Prometheus vanished again before the scout ship could even return fire. The bridge crew watched in satisfaction as confusion and fear spread through the alien vessel's communications. They were broadcasting distress calls in all directions, their messages becoming more panicked by the second. Message received and logged, Brown reported with a grin. They're saying they were attacked by a ghost. Walker nodded, pleased. Good. Let them spread the word. The Dominion is about to learn that the dead don't always stay dead. The Prometheus slipped away into the darkness of space, leaving the crippled scout ship behind. It was a small victory, but an important one. They had proved their new capabilities worked. Now it was time to plan something bigger. Much bigger. News of the ghost ship spread through the Dominion fleet like wildfire. Over the next 3 days, 4 more of their ships were attacked by an enemy they couldn't see or fight. Each time, the pattern was the same. The massive shape of a destroyed human battleship would appear from nowhere, strike with impossible accuracy, and vanish before they could respond. Admiral Walker stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the latest batch of intercepted communications scroll across his screen. The Dominion commanders were becoming paranoid, jumping at shadows. Some were even suggesting delays to their planned attack on Earth. Sir, Lisa Brown called from her communication station. You need to hear this. They're scrambling their entire patrol network. Every ship is being ordered to travel in groups of 3 or more. They're scared. Tactical Officer Peters added with satisfaction. Their sensors still can't track us when we're phase shifted. They don't know where we'll strike next. Walker nodded, studying the tactical display where red dots showed Dominion ship positions. Their neat, ordered formations were beginning to show signs of strain. Ships were clustering together, leaving gaps in their defense screen. It was exactly what he had hoped for. Status report, he ordered. How are we holding up after the last attack? Chief Engineer Taylor's voice came over the comm. Better than expected, sir. The phase shifting is actually helping us conserve power. When we're fully shifted, our systems draw minimal energy. We've even managed to repair some of the hull damage in sections 4 and 5. And the quantum drive. Stable, Lieutenant Mason reported from his station. We fine-tuned the shift controls. I can now move us between states almost instantly. And I found something else. He gestured to his screen excitedly. When we're at 30% shift, we can actually see their ship networks. It looks like energy lines connecting their vessels. Walker moved to Mason's station. His interest peaked. "Show me." The screen displayed a complex web of energy signatures linking the Dominion ships. It looked like a giant spider web, with each ship maintaining its exact position relative to the others. "Their entire combat system depends on this network," Mason explained. "Shields, weapons, even their artificial gravity. Everything is coordinated through these connections, but maintaining these links requires incredible precision. Even a small disruption could cause the whole thing to fail." Walker finished. A plan was forming in his mind. How close would we need to get to disrupt one of these connections? Mason ran some quick calculations. Very close, or maybe 50 kilometers. But at that range, if they detect us, they'd throw everything they have at us. Peters finished grimly. "Even with our phase shifting, we couldn't survive their combined firepower." Walker straightened up, his face determined. "Then we'll have to make sure they don't detect us until it's too late. Show me their supply lines." Peters brought up a new tactical display. Red lines showed the routes Dominion supply ships were using to support their invasion fleet. Most were heavily guarded, but there was one route, running close to Jupiter's orbit, that looked promising. "There," Walker pointed. "They're moving fuel and ammunition through that corridor. Those ships will be heavily loaded, slower to react. And look at the escort pattern. Gaps of almost 10 minutes between patrol passes." The bridge crew studied the display, seeing what their commander had spotted. It was an opportunity, but a dangerous one. "If we time it right," Peters said slowly, "we could hit one of those supply convoys during a patrol gap. Take out their escorts before they can call for help." "And then," Walker prompted. "And then," Mason's eyes widened as he understood, "we could use their own supply ships against them. If we can capture one intact." Walker smiled grimly. "We could slip right into their fleet disguised as a supply delivery. Get close enough to disrupt their network without raising suspicion." It was a bold plan, maybe too bold, but they were running out of time. The Dominion fleet was still moving toward Earth, and despite their recent victories, the Prometheus was still just one ship against an armada. "Get me detailed scans of their supply ships," Walker ordered. "I want to know every way in and out of those vessels, and find me their cargo manifests. We need to know exactly what they're carrying and when." The next 12 hours were a blur of activity. The crew studied Dominion supply procedures, practiced their phase-shifting maneuvers, and prepared for what might be their most dangerous mission yet. Their target was chosen. A convoy of 3 supply ships escorted by 2 Dominion destroyers, scheduled to pass through the Jupiter corridor in 18 hours. The supply ships were carrying fuel cells and shield generators, critical supplies for the invasion fleet. "Remember," Walker addressed his crew as they made final preparations, "we need at least one supply ship intact. Time your shots carefully. And be ready for anything. The Dominion may be scared, but they're not stupid. They might have a few surprises of their own." The Prometheus took up position along the supply route, fully phase-shifted and running silent. Hours ticked by as they waited for their prey. "Convoy approaching," Brown reported finally. "Right on schedule. Patrol ships have just passed through. Next sweep in 12 minutes. "Show me," Walker ordered. The main screen lit up, showing the convoy moving through space. The supply ships were huge, boxy vessels, their holds stuffed with supplies for the invasion fleet. The escort destroyers moved in precise patterns around them, scanning constantly for threats. "Take us in," Walker commanded. "Maintain full phase shift until we're in position." The Prometheus glided forward like a shark approaching its prey. They passed right through one of the escort destroyers, the alien ship's crew completely unaware of the ghost in their midst. "In position," Peters reported. "Optimal firing solutions calculated." Walker took a deep breath. Everything depended on perfect timing now. "Tactical, target the escort ship's engines and weapons. Mason, Prepare to shift us back on my mark. Communications jammed their distress frequencies the moment we appear. The bridge crew tensed, ready for action. The convoy continued forward, unaware of the trap they were about to spring. 3, 2, 1, mark. The Prometheus burst into normal space directly between the escort ships. Its main guns fired before the Dominion vessels could even register its presence, precise shots destroying their engines and weapon systems. Phase shift at 40%. Walker ordered as return fire from the destroyer's secondary weapons blazed through space. The shots passed harmlessly through the Prometheus's partially shifted hull. Escort ships disabled, Peters reported. Supply vessels are attempting to flee. Not today, Walker said. Take out their engines. Carefully. The Prometheus's guns spoke again, precision shots disabling the supply ship's propulsion systems without damaging their precious cargo. In less than 2 minutes, the entire convoy was dead in space. No distress calls got out. Brown confirmed. We're clean. Walker allowed himself a small smile. Begin boarding operations. I want those supply ships secured and their crews contained. And download everything from their computers. We're going to need their security codes. As the crew moved to carry out his orders, Walker stared at the disabled Dominion ships on his screen. The real test was still to come. Soon, they would use these captured vessels to infiltrate the heart of the enemy fleet. And then they would show the Dominion that they had made a fatal mistake in underestimating humanity's determination to survive. The ghost ship had struck again. And this time, they had gained more than just another victory. They had gained the key to the enemy's destruction. The Dominion's day of reckoning was approaching, and they wouldn't see it coming until it was far too late. The captured Dominion supply ship moved slowly through space, its massive engines pushing it toward the invasion fleet. Behind its hulking form, hidden in its sensor shadow and phase shifted to near invisibility, the Prometheus followed like a ghost. Admiral Walker watched the main tactical display as they approached the fleet. Their stolen ship's transponders were broadcasting the correct identification codes, copied from its computer systems before they'd stripped it for parts. The cargo holds were still mostly full, enough to make the deception believable. Status report, he ordered quietly. Supply ship's autopilot is functioning perfectly, Lieutenant Mason reported from his station. Their computers accepted our modified protocols. As far as they can tell, it's just another routine delivery. Enemy patrol approaching, Peters warned from tactical. 2 cruisers, coming in for a standard security scan. Walker nodded calmly. Maintain position. Let them scan the supply ship. Keep our phase shift at maximum. The bridge crew held their breath as the Dominion cruisers drew near. They had done everything possible to make the supply ship look normal, but one careful scan, one suspicious officer, and their plan would fall apart. The cruisers moved in close, their scanning beams washing over the supply ship. On the main screen, Walker could see their weapon ports were open, standard procedure, but still nerve-wracking. They're requesting cargo manifests, Brown reported from communications. Transmitting our prepared documents now. Seconds stretched into minutes as they waited. The Prometheus hung in space like a ghost, invisible to the enemy ships barely a kilometer away. Scans complete, Brown finally reported. They're giving us clearance to proceed. Course laid in to Docking Station 7. A collective sigh of relief went through the bridge. Phase 1 of their plan had worked. Now came the hard part. Take us in, Walker ordered. Nice and slow. Keep us in the supply ship's shadow. The massive supply vessel lumbered forward, the Prometheus following in perfect synchronization. Ahead of them, the main Dominion fleet spread out across space like a vast metal city. Hundreds of ships moved in precise formations, maintaining their complex network of energy connections. Look at those dreadnoughts, Peters whispered, awe in his voice despite their enmity. The 3 largest ships in the Dominion fleet hung at the center of their formation, each one nearly 10 times the size of the Prometheus. Energy beams connected them to every other ship in the fleet, forming the heart of their defensive network. Stay focused, Walker reminded them. Lieutenant Mason, what's the status of their network? Mason studied his readings. The connections are even stronger than we thought. Each ship is linked to at least 3 others. The dreadnoughts are connected to everything. It's like a spider web made of pure energy. And we're about to kick that web, Walker said grimly. Everyone clear on their roles. The bridge crew nodded. They had rehearsed this plan dozens of times, but doing it for real, surrounded by hundreds of enemy ships, was different. One mistake would mean instant death. Supply ship approaching docking station, Peters reported. Final approach beginning. Walker straightened in his chair. Prepare for phase shift synchronization. The moment that supply ship docks, we make our move. The supply vessel's docking procedure seemed to take forever. They watched as it carefully maneuvered into position, extending its docking clamps toward the station. With a final thud that they felt through their phase-shifted hull, it locked into place. Now, Walker ordered, take us in. The Prometheus glided forward, maintaining its phase shift. They moved through the supply ship's hull as if it wasn't there, positioning themselves perfectly in the gap between the vessel and the docking station. Position locked, Mason reported. Phase shift holding at 95%. They still can't see us. Walker leaned forward. Show me the network connections. The tactical display lit up with lines of energy, showing the complex web of connections between the Dominion ships. From their position, they could see how the energy flowed from ship to ship, coordinating their shields and weapons. Sir, Mason said suddenly, I'm detecting power fluctuations in their network. The docking procedure. It's causing tiny interruptions in the energy flow. Just for milliseconds. But enough to hide our disruption, Walker finished. This is our chance. Begin power-up sequence. The Prometheus's engines hummed to life, still masked by the supply ship's systems. They had discovered that the quantum drive, when properly tuned, could generate its own energy field, one that would interfere catastrophically with the Dominion's network. Quantum drive at 60% power, engineering reported. Field generation beginning. Warning lights suddenly flashed across Mason's console. Sir, they're detecting something. Security teams are being dispatched to the docking station. Too late, Walker said with grim satisfaction. Quantum field to maximum power. Disrupt their network. The Prometheus's quantum drive screamed as it generated a massive energy field. The effect was instant and devastating. The careful web of connections between the Dominion ships began to waver and break. It's working, Mason shouted. Their network is collapsing. The dreadnoughts are losing connection with the fleet. All around them, Dominion ships began to drift out of formation as their coordinated systems failed. Shields flickered and died. Weapon systems went dark. The perfectly organized fleet was descending into chaos. Phase shift to 40%, Walker ordered. Prepare main weapons. Target the nearest dreadnought's command center. The Prometheus shifted into partial visibility, its guns charging with power. The Dominion ships, their sensors scrambled by the collapsing network, couldn't react fast enough. Fire. The Prometheus's main guns roared to life, sending precisely targeted shots through the dreadnought's now vulnerable hull. The massive ship's bridge exploded in a spectacular fireball, leaving it dead in space. Multiple ships powering weapons, Peters warned. They're trying to coordinate their fire manually. Phase shift to 80%, Walker commanded. Move us toward the second dreadnought. Maintain quantum field disruption. The Prometheus slipped through space like a vengeful spirit, almost invisible but leaving destruction in its wake. Without their network, the Dominion ships were forced to fight as individuals, something they had never trained for. Sir, Brown called out. The fleet is falling into complete chaos. Ships are firing blindly. Some are even hitting their own vessels. Walker watched as the mighty Dominion fleet, pride of their empire, dissolved into confusion and panic. Ships crashed into each other as their formation collapsed. The careful organization that had made them so powerful was now causing their destruction. "Bring us around," he ordered. "Target the second dreadnought's engines. Let's give them something else to think about." The Prometheus turned gracefully through the chaos, its quantum field continuing to disrupt any attempt by the Dominion to restore their network. They had trained for this moment, prepared for every possibility. The enemy had numbers, but the Prometheus had something better, a crew that knew how to think and fight independently. As they lined up their shot on the second dreadnought, Walker allowed himself a small smile. The Dominion had thought humanity would be easy prey. They had thought superior technology and perfect coordination would guarantee their victory. They had thought wrong, and now they were about to learn just how wrong they had been. Chaos reigned in the heart of the Dominion fleet. The second dreadnought's engines erupted in a series of explosions as the Prometheus's perfectly aimed shots found their mark. The massive ship began to drift, its power systems failing as its crew struggled to maintain control without their precious network. 2 down, Peters reported from Tactical. 1 to go. "But they're adapting, sir. The third dreadnought is pulling back, surrounding itself with smaller ships." Admiral Walker studied the tactical display. The remaining Dominion ships were indeed learning, forming defensive clusters instead of relying on their broken network. It wouldn't be as effective as their linked systems, but it was still dangerous. "Sir," Brown called out urgently from communications, "multiple signals from Earth's direction. Our orbital defense stations are powering up." "They've seen what's happening." A smile crossed Walker's face. He had hoped Earth's defenders would notice the chaos and take advantage. Their orbital stations weren't powerful enough to stand against the Dominion fleet at full strength, but against scattered, uncoordinated ships. "Send them a tight beam transmission," he ordered. "Let them know we're here. Tell them to target any ship trying to restore the network." The Prometheus phased through a cluster of panicked Dominion cruisers, its quantum field continuing to disrupt any attempt to rebuild their coordination. The enemy ships fired blindly, their shots passing harmlessly through the battleship's shifted hull. "Multiple Earth defense stations engaging," Peters reported with excitement. "They're picking off the isolated ships. The Dominion fleet is being caught between us." But the enemy wasn't finished yet. The final dreadnought, protected by its screen of smaller ships, was preparing something. Energy readings from the massive vessel were climbing rapidly. "Sir," Mason called out, worry in his voice, "they're charging some kind of pulse weapon. The energy signature, it's like nothing I've ever seen." Walker's eyes narrowed. "They're desperate. They'll try anything to stop us now. Show me their power distribution." The tactical display zoomed in on the dreadnought. Energy was being channeled from every system into what looked like a massive emitter array on its bow. "Analysis complete," Mason reported. Sir, it's a quantum pulse. They're trying to force everything in the area back into normal space. If they hit us with that while we're phase shifted." He didn't need to finish. Being forced back to normal space suddenly could tear the Prometheus apart. "How long until they fire?" Walker demanded. 2 minutes, maybe less. "And sir, the pulse will be powerful enough to reach Earth's defense stations. It'll knock out their shields completely." Walker's mind raced. They couldn't let that weapon fire, but getting close enough to stop it would be nearly suicide. The dreadnought's defensive screen was too thick to penetrate quickly. Then he saw it, a pattern in the enemy formation, a flaw born of their panic and lack of coordination. The defending ships were clustered too tightly around their flagship. "All power to engines," he ordered. "Plot me a course straight through their defensive screen. Calculate minimum safe distance for quantum field collapse." The bridge crew stared at him for a moment, then understood his plan. It was insane, dangerous, and possibly brilliant. "Course plotted," Mason reported. "But sir, at that speed, if our calculations are off by even a fraction, then we better get them right," Walker said firmly, "because we're only going to get one shot at this. Engineering, prepare for maximum power to the quantum drive on my mark." The Prometheus's engines roared to life, pushing the battleship forward at maximum acceleration. They phased through the first line of defensive ships like a ghost through a wall. "Quantum pulse charging at 80%, Peters warned. 1 minute to firing." "Steady," Walker commanded as they closed the distance. The dreadnought grew larger on their screen, its pulse weapon gathering enough energy to be visible to the naked eye. "Defensive screen approaching," Mason reported. "Phase shift holding at 90%. Quantum field at maximum disruption." "Wait for it," Walker said softly, watching the distance markers count down. The defending ships were firing continuously now, their shots passing through the Prometheus's phased hull. They were too close together, too focused on protecting their flagship. "Quantum pulse at 95%. 30 seconds. Now," Walker roared. "Cut quantum field. Full power to the drive." The Prometheus's disruption field vanished. At the same moment, its quantum drive engaged at maximum power, but not to phase shift. Instead, it created a massive pulse of its own, one that pushed them completely into normal space with tremendous force. The physics were simple but devastating. The Prometheus materialized inside the defensive screen, its sudden appearance creating a shockwave of displaced energy. The defending ships, packed too closely together, were thrown apart like leaves in a hurricane. "Hard about," Walker commanded. "All weapons on the pulse emitter. Fire everything." The Prometheus spun on its axis with perfect precision, every gun it had targeting the dreadnought's weapon. Without its defensive screen, the massive ship was exposed. "Quantum pulse at 99%. They're about to fire." "Not today," Walker said quietly. "Fire." The Prometheus's guns spoke as one. Missiles, energy beams, and projectiles struck the dreadnought's pulse emitter in a concentrated barrage. The weapon's containment field collapsed, and the stored energy exploded outward. The dreadnought's entire bow section disappeared in a massive fireball. Secondary explosions chained through the mighty ship as its power systems overloaded. The pride of the Dominion fleet began to break apart. "Direct hit," Peters shouted. "Dreadnought's power core is going critical. All ships in the area are retreating." "Get us clear," Walker ordered. "Maximum safe distance. Signal Earth's defense stations to do the same." The Prometheus pulled away as the dreadnought's final death throes lit up space. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface, a new star briefly outshining all others. When the light faded, the situation was clear. The Dominion fleet, what was left of it, was in full retreat. Without their network, without their dreadnoughts, they had lost their advantage. More importantly, they had lost their confidence. "Sir," Brown reported, joy in her voice, "signals from Earth. All orbital defense stations report the enemy is retreating from the system. They're running." A cheer went up from the bridge crew. Walker let them celebrate for a moment before calling for quiet. "Status report," he ordered. "What's our condition?" "Hull integrity at 60%, engineering reported. Quantum drive is strained but functional. We can still fight if we need to." "We won't need to," Walker said, looking at the tactical display. The Dominion ships were fleeing in all directions, their perfect formation now just a memory. They've learned their lesson. Earth is not an easy target. "Incoming transmission from Earth Command," Brown announced. They're asking who we are." Walker smiled. "Tell them the Prometheus sends its regards. Tell them humanity's last battleship came back from the dead to protect its home." As Brown relayed the message, Walker looked around at his crew. They were tired, they were battered, but they had done the impossible. They had turned their ship's near destruction into an advantage, had become the ghost that haunted their enemies, and had saved their homeworld. "Well done, all of you," he said quietly. "Now, let's go home. I think Earth's defenders would like to hear how we managed all this." The Prometheus turned toward Earth, its hull gleaming in the sunlight. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their weapons or their technology, but in their ability to adapt, to think differently, to turn defeat into victory. The Dominion had thought they were facing a primitive species, easy to conquer. Instead, they had learned a lesson they would never forget. Never underestimate humanity's will to survive, because sometimes what appears to be destroyed is merely waiting for the right moment to strike back.